Well, here's today's weather to watch, and we've got some tropical trouble. Most of this activity is not going to affect the U.S., but one storm in particular, and it's not the one you expect probably, may cause a spike in rainfall. Also, very chilly weather as autumnal air starts to make its way into the U.S. more and more. Well, I'm meteorologist Ted Keller. Welcome. Here is a look at temperatures here at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Central Daylight Time, with readings only in the 60s on almost every location on this map, except where it's in the 50s. So, very, very cool air starting to infiltrate the U.S. with big old high pressure moving on down. I'll show you that in a minute. Here's the National Weather Service consensus on low temperatures tonight. So, the upper part of New York State down below freezing. In fact, 27 forecast for one location there. Same can be said for northern Maine and parts of Vermont and New Hampshire as well. And this is for tomorrow morning, Thursday morning. And Michigan, kind of off the map there, kind of cold as well. And then we move ahead to Friday morning, and it's more widespread, the cold, that is, through much of New England with widespread readings. Look at this hard freeze in upstate New York, 24 degrees, 21 degrees in northern Maine. So this air mass is really starting to get serious. So the freeze warnings are in effect for this darker shade of purple, a couple of locations here and here. And I'm wondering if when I recorded this, no, they didn't actually say, they must have already had a freeze in Maine. I didn't see it update here, but of course, as you saw with the low temperatures, that would be appropriate. Well, it's not much of a hazard, but this weekend, snow in the higher elevations of the Rockies there in Montana, Idaho, Yellowstone would be included in that, and that would be for this Saturday and Sunday with the possibility of much more actually in some locations than 4 inches of snow. Again, another sign that the cold air is starting to make inroads into the U.S. here as we dive into October. We'll just take a look at the high temperature departure, though, and in quite striking contrast to that, though, much of the country is experiencing above normal temperatures. And of course, you would expect it to be green shaded up there below normal, but this activity here is all much above normal, where you see the shading of yellow and orange. That's for tomorrow, which is Thursday. Saturday, it gets even warmer in Montana. And yes, the snow is forecast for this area here, but hang on, it's going to get colder there. Meanwhile, New England starts to warm up. And again, readings much above normal. Rapid City, 81 degrees on Saturday. That's about 12 to 15 degrees above normal. And then we have another front moving across the plains. And that's what's going to finally trigger enough colder temperatures in the upper elevations for that snow to be a possibility. With the weather systems, you can clearly see cutting through the northern plains, especially on Monday. The 6 to 10 day temperature forecast on the day right after that, Tuesday, through the following weekend, still calls for a high chance of Texas being hot and much of the central plains being on the warm side, and even much of the northern plains and parts of the Great Lakes. Meanwhile, you can kind of see the jet streams making inroads now into California with a cooler pattern and a wetter pattern, I think, for them as well. I'll show you the 6 to 10 day precipitation outlook later in this presentation. Well, in the tropics, remember on the opening map, I showed you there was one system right here. That's Tropical Storm Jerry. We'll take a closer look at that in a minute. Is there some disturbed weather there? Yeah. If it ever becomes anything, which I don't think it will, it's going ashore in Mexico, so we don't really need to worry about it. We'll take a closer look at Jerry. Always impressive to see the blow up of convection. When you start seeing the whites and even the purples, that means we're inferring height by temperature. So that means it's high up in the atmosphere, and it's not a real symmetrical storm, but it is showing some signs of blowing up. It really doesn't matter because this, like almost every single storm this season, and predictably so, has not really affected much land and has shown early signs of curving back out in the Atlantic, as this guidance shows from the GFS model. This is the ensemble, so it's a pretty tight clustering here and agreement. This thing is just kind of nick the Leeward Islands and then head off into the central portion of the Atlantic, and that's it. What's interesting, though, and it's not showing up in any of the forecasts, is I'm looking at the EFS. This is the European forecast system. And so the probability here of a tropical storm or tropical system, that's Jerry right there. This is interesting to me. Off the coast of the Carolinas, there's, 30-40% probabilities of something developing, although the National Hurricane Center has not mentioned anything about that. Sliding back to this, we do have that system again there in the Bay of Campeche, but it's going to be moving inland. So I don't think, again, pretty low chance of tropical storm formation with that. Meanwhile, the parade of systems continues here, and we'll dive in on that more in just a second. I did want to show you, though, on Tuesdays, yesterday, they do issue a 2 and a 3 week tropical Atlantic forecast. There's really nothing showing up out in the main development region, but that's starting to be a region that's not really looked at as much anymore as we get later into October. This, however, is. So what we see here on week 3 is basically stalled fronts, little swirls that develop in this area that could develop into something. And depending on what's going on at the jet stream level, some of these actually do make it northward or even northeastward or even northwestward. And some of them just kind of cross over the peninsula there and just keep on going off into the Pacific. And a very high probability of that happening next week too. And still a little bit of leftover from the main development region next week as well. Here is the next name on the list. It'll be Karen if we can manage to get one in the Atlantic. With the formation of Jerry, that's 10 named storms so far this season. It has not become a hurricane yet, so these two total still stand at 4. And it's interesting to note that of the hurricanes that have formed, they have been very strong, all 4 of them at one point in their life. Here is Gabrielle. I wanted to focus on this for 2 reasons. Number one, it's just a beautiful satellite image. My goodness, that is just amazing to look at when you see it in the visible from this afternoon. It's a tropical storm, not a hurricane. There's no real well-defined eye, but you certainly see the circulation. This storm is forecast to become still stay a storm and then become a tropical depression as it heads up toward Baja, basically. And beyond that is what we need to talk about. And when we get to the heavy rain discussion, I'll fill in a little bit more on how Priscilla is going to be affecting our weather. And I think I named that wrong on the loop. I'm sorry, it is Priscilla. If it might have said Gabrielle. Sorry about that. Anyway, here's a visible satellite loop showing much of the country is calm. This cloudiness is all high clouds. You can see the front right here is very visible, certainly. And here is the edge of that tropical storm I just showed you. And if you already guessed, it's moving in this direction. So it probably will impact rainfall for sure. At the upper levels, 500 millibars, a pretty well-established trough in the west. And that's what's going to move and start the. Remember I showed you on the temperature forecast there was a dividing line here by late in the weekend. So this is basically going to move and cool the west down a little bit. That's going to help produce that snow potential up there. On the surface map, high pressure is centered over Rhinelander, Wisconsin in the mid part of Wednesday and is moving toward New England. Of course, that is the reason for all the frost and freeze advisories and even freeze warnings for that part of the world. Well, here's the heavy rain look. Now we're just looking at the Weather Prediction Center's total precipitation for the next 5 days. A little bit of rain in Minnesota. This is the snow in the northern plains, but this right here is what we're going to focus on primarily. A lot of this heavy rain is right along the coastal areas, and that may still produce several inches of rain in some of the cities if you're right on the Atlantic. But we'll come back to the southwest, show you the heavy rain hazard. This is a slight risk of at least a 15% chance of anything that happens exceeding flash flood guidance. So this is tomorrow, Thursday, day 2. Friday, it moves very little, still the Four Corners region under the gun. And on Saturday, it doesn't really move a whole lot, maybe extends more to the south, and that's it. If we take a close-up look at the rainfall totals here, we see commonly 3+ inches of rain, maybe 2 to 3, maybe approaching 4 in parts of central and northern Arizona and in the high desert of Colorado there. So again, that's the reason for the flash flood watch that was posted for that area, basically matching what I just showed you over that 3-day period. And then we'll finally look at whether this is a trend that we can count on. This goes all the way to next week, Tuesday. Remember I told you the trough is starting to establish itself more over the west, so that's going to lead to moisture flow and increased rain chances for next week through parts of California and even the northern plains, while the Gulf Coast area is forecast to be pretty dry most of next week. Thanks for watching this edition of Weather to Watch. It comes out every other day, or as the weather necessitates. Please remember to share this with your friends, subscribe to the channel, or at the very least, like what you just watched. Thanks.